let's bring in Marcus Farrell, who is co-host of Clickbaity Thirst.
Political Thirst Trap.
Political Thirst Trap. I always get it tongue-tied. And Torrin Walker, you guys have seen Torrin on here before as well, independent journalist. Welcome, both of you. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure, Sabby. Good to see you again.
Sabby, thanks for having me as always. And sorry about the nor'easter going on up there.
It's crazy. I've been telling people, like, we were heading into summer weather, and then all of a sudden the weather just flipped and they said, here comes the nor'easter. So it's been windy and rainy and the temperature dropped, but not for long. So we have quite a bit to discuss tonight. Someone sent me this article, and I want to share this on the screen because this is a subject I've talked about on the show quite a bit. This involves Atlanta. Black residents displaced by design. In Atlanta gentrification war, Atlanta is no longer a majority Black city, and it is not alone. So want to dive into this here. It says a new report shows Atlanta is a hot spot for extreme gentrification. Over the past 5 decades, a mass infiltration of new residents has led to the displacement of thousands of Black residents. And everyone, check this out here. It said that Atlanta saw 155 formerly majority Black neighborhoods flip to majority white residents. During this period, the city lost an estimated 22,000 Black residents in gentrification of the 4th Ward, East Atlanta, and Kirkwood. So let's get into this. I want to talk to both of you because it's been a couple of years since I've been to Atlanta, so it's been a while. Just keep that in mind. But the last time I was there, I didn't notice the gentrification. And I've been to Atlanta a couple of times. Apparently, things have definitely changed. What's happening? Like, how was this able to go in this direction in Atlanta, of all places? Because in the Northeast, we're used to it. We've been dealing with gentrification for a long time. Actually, I would say DC and North. So the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic, we have been dealing with this for quite a long time. I was very shocked to see this article about Atlanta. What is going on? Let's start with Marcus.
So 2 of those neighborhoods I used to live in, Kirkwood and 4th Ward, right? And what I'm going to say is very simple, right? Gentrification comes with, first off, the major one, the big one recently is the Beltline, right? The Beltline has a lot to do with certain areas gentrification. The Beltline and the project of the Beltline basically took a circle around the inner city of Atlanta, and the train used to run through Black neighborhoods. And people don't understand that the train used to be around Black neighborhoods. Well, since that train line stopped running like that, what they did was they decided to pave it, make it walkable, make it pretty, And along with that came the new apartments. Along with that came the new housing. Along with that came sort of the new environment that they wanted to create under the premise of quote unquote crime. The main thing I want to say is that this is from Democratic leadership, right? This is from blatant. If we can go from when the Olympics came to Atlanta in '96. And basically said, okay, you know what? We're now an international city. And I don't want to take anything away from Maynard Jackson, because Maynard Jackson was an amazing mayor, and he brought a lot of economic stability to the city with the work that he did, bringing the airport here and then setting up the trajectory for us to be able to actually go get the Olympics, and the Olympics come here in '96. But with that being said, the Olympic Committee came to town and they were like, well, this is all fine and dandy, but what's up with all these Negroes? What's up with all these Black people, right? And from that point on, it became a slow erosion of culturally Black neighborhoods. If you talk about 4th Ward, you're talking about where the King Center is, where Martin Luther King grew up, in the 4th Ward. Well, if you look at Martin Luther King's actual house, those houses surrounding that area might be one of the last areas within 2 or 3 miles that have Black people in them, right? And if you are Black if you are Black and you live in these areas, then you've been pushed out. White flight happened in the 60s. And all of a sudden, reverse white flight is happening in the 90s and 2000s. The last thing I want to bring up is the last public housing. Atlanta used to be famous, good and bad, for their housing projects, the homes, as they used to call them, different kinds, right? And a lot of people that we know about came from these places. And in 2004, just like you can say the same thing about Cabrini Green in Chicago, in 2004, the last public housing sector was tore down in the city of Atlanta proper, the last public housing. And there was no place for these people to go within their own city. They didn't tear these places down and rebuild new neighborhoods. They either tore them down and kept them there, kept these same buildings there unoccupied, or they were bought by white companies, literally refurbished, right? And then the area around it would turn into these walkable spaces.
The walkable spaces, because we're dealing with that here in Boston as well. A lot of people don't realize that when they say, okay, we're going to make more pedestrian friendly, like your neighborhood's more pedestrian friendly, that means that other things are going to be taken away. That could include public transportation, as Marcus was mentioning there. So that's important for people to hear. Torrin, this whole issue here with the Olympics, because I remember when the Olympics came to Atlanta and I was like, wow, I'm surprised, like, whoa, the Olympics is going to be in Atlanta. Do you think that was a mistake? Do you think that that's what kicked off the gentrification?
I don't think it was a mistake having the Olympics here. To be honest with you, I first moved to Atlanta around the time of the Olympics. I was there about a year before the Olympics came to Atlanta. And when I first got to Atlanta, there was a energy in that city where even obviously I wasn't born at that time, but it almost felt like the Harlem Renaissance. It's like you had Black people who were in positions of power. You had Black people who owned businesses. You had Black people who were part of the cultural lifeblood of this city. What the Olympics did was basically take that energy and it made it worldwide. And what happens when you take something that's cultural in America and make it worldwide? It becomes commercialized and it becomes commodified. That's part of the reason things happen what happened. Another part of what happened, and this goes back to what Marcus said, and I'm gonna say it a little bit more direct than the way he said it, but all love to my brother. Atlanta is gentrified because the people in power in City Hall wanted to gentrify. You have Black people in power in Atlanta. Let me say it like this, I'm gonna be direct. The Black people in City Hall right now are not the Black people that built that City Hall. The people who are taking over Maynard Jackson's legacy are not keeping up with Maynard Jackson's legacy. They're there to cash out. They're there to get as much money as they can from real estate developers. They're there to cut deals with themselves after they get into the mayor's office. And whatever people wanted to be able to be, if you considered yourself an Atlanta citizen, there was a legacy of civic involvement that you could go to your mayor, you could go to your council person and possibly get the chance to be heard. That is over. The people who are running Atlanta right now, even though they look like us, those people are not like us, to paraphrase Kendrick Lamar for the 1 millionth time. There's a different attitude that's running Atlanta now than there is now. A lot of that unity and a lot of that sort of cultural connection that's there, that's gone now. I won't say it started with the Olympics, but it started after the Olympics, because if you look at who became the mayor and the power structure in the city after the Olympics came in, you had a lot of people who became mayors who were new to the city, who didn't understand the culture of the city, and they were basically trying to impose some of the things that they did in other cities and other places. I'm going to be direct. People like Bill Campbell, other people who came into the city, who destroyed a lot of the cultural energy that made Black people around the world want to come to Atlanta. They started breaking out of infrastructure, and what that did was it laid the way open, like Marcus said, for people to come in, start developing that land, start developing those businesses, started taking over some of those corporations and companies, to the point where if you go to Atlanta right now, the Atlanta that you see is basically window dressing for gentrification by pricing people out of their neighborhoods and also destroying some of the cultural legacy that Atlanta trades on. That's what's happening. The people who run it don't care about the legacy of that city. That's really why you see it the way it is now. There's places you can go from, places that used to be like authentically Black. Now, they might have been lower income, but there were people there who worked and they basically took care of their families. They were able to feed their families. They were able to build a cultural legacy there. Those people got pushed out, the way Marcus said, to where they're in the suburbs now. And people who are coming in to buy those houses for pennies on the dollar, along with the developers who buy up whole neighborhoods for pennies on the dollar and let them sit and price people out of them. And then they build like those econo box like condos you see everywhere, more growing up around the country. You don't have a culture there anymore. So that's what's happening. It's just the hyper capitalism that Atlanta traded on is basically overtaking Atlanta. And that's what you're dealing with right now.
What about people like Killer Mike? Like Killer Mike is very vocal. I mean, whether it's politics, whether it's music, whether it's cultural issues, he's been very outspoken about a lot of things. Where does he like fit into all of this? I mean, like when you're talking about the leadership in Atlanta, and this is the same problem that we ran into. I can tell you guys, like my family's from Baltimore, same problem. Baltimore has had black mayor after black mayor after black mayor, and Baltimore, the city has just been run into the ground. Every time I go back to visit, it looks like someone dropped a bomb yesterday. Like I'm not kidding. Like they just let the city just fall apart completely. But when you look at someone like Killer Mike, someone who does have a big platform, people tend to listen to him. Have you heard him say anything about the gentrification that's happening? And I asked that question because I did ask someone else about a year or two ago if he had said anything about Cop City, and they said at that time he was silent. Marcus.
I think it's more important than him saying anything about gentrification as pertaining to actually doing things. He reopened Bankhead Seafood. Yeah, that's a business, right? But that was a cultural staple that was closed down basically because they were priced out of being able to. And these are 20, 30 jobs that he opened a business for, and he hired specifically locally, right? He has barbershops all over the city of Atlanta, right? Especially in the Edgewood area where like these are cultural centers. You gotta have some version of black-owned businesses. Every now and then, even though I'm fuzzy right now, every now and then I go and get my hair cut at the swag shop on Edgewood, right? Right across the street from the Jamaican joint. You gotta go there if you come to Atlanta. It's amazing. No, I'm talking about the Jamaican joint. The Jamaican joint across the street is amazing. Neither here nor there. It's trying to keep and maintain these areas and have people employed. I think there's more. I mean, we can get back to Killer Mike, but I do want to make one point. I think there's something more important that Torin touched on that we just need to think about, and that is, if you look at Keisha Lance Bottoms, if you look at what's the brother's name before her? Kesheev, right? These are the two of the major culprits of gentrification in Atlanta, right? They're definitely the major culprits of starting Cop City, right? Just the idea of it, right? And look at what Keisha's doing right now. Keisha left Atlanta as the mayor. Then she goes to the Biden White House. Like they're getting rewarded to kick black people out of they're failing upwards, right? So now Keisha's about to run for governor of the state, right? And we don't want what happened to Atlanta to happen to Macon, to happen to Columbus, to happen to Savannah, right? And Savannah's slowly getting gentrified also. So if you don't want to, like, if you want to look at it, any place that might have value that's close to downtown is getting destroyed. I can't knock Mike because Mike is hiring black people from the neighborhood. Mike is an advocate for like making sure that black businesses stay in the areas that they're supposed to stay in. And he throws other businesses money to stay open because he just wants these people to be in business in black neighborhoods. There's some real true warriors for their culture. There are a lot of like famous warriors that are trying to save their neighborhoods. But then again, there's also people who show up at the election night party, right? Who go and party with the new mayor and sit by idly and watch our neighborhoods go from, you know, black culture, black center, and under auspice of crime and also just the financial aspect of it. They get pushed out of their neighborhoods and they sit silently by. But Mike's not one of them.
What about people like Torin? What about people like Stacey Abrams? And some of these other celebrities, like, I don't know if everybody knows, but there's a lot of celebrities that live in Atlanta, like Buckhead, et cetera. Like, has Usher said anything? Like, I'm just thinking of all the famous people that live in Atlanta. Do you ever see them out within the community, like speaking on said issues?
Well, I'm a respond to what Marcus said, because I do have to give a shout out to Killer Mike, because just in full disclosure, this is somebody who I actually know, and Killer Mike actually does do work in the community where nobody's looking. So I got to give him respect for that. He does do that, and there are a couple of other people who work in the entertainment industry who do that. But something you have to understand, Sabby, and I need to tell everybody else this. People look at Atlanta on BET and they look at all these TV shows and they look at all this stuff and they think Atlanta's one way, and that definitely is a part of Atlanta. but that celebrity imagery part of Atlanta is totally different from the reality of Atlanta. I'm gonna come around to answer your question real quick, but I'm just saying that I think sometimes people get this idea of what Atlanta is from television, from movies and everything, because it looks shiny, it looks good, it looks fresh, and everybody looks good, and that is there. But a lot of times people who were there in the entertainment industry are just there for the entertainment industry. They have their own little enclaves. They might show up every now and then for some social event or something heinous happens, like what happened with the brother who had his life taken a few years ago. They'll show up for stuff like that. That sort of stuff looks good on paper because it's something that you can transmit around the world and nobody has to pay attention to it. But I'm gonna be honest with you, there's very few people on that level that do stuff publicly, but there are quite a few who do stuff on the quiet that you don't hear about. But I think, to be honest with you, celebrities is a bad barometer to even try to say what people are saying, because a lot of times you have some that say a lot of stuff and don't do anything. There's a lot of that here. And you have people who say the right things at the right time because there's a hot topic issue going on. So no, it's not that much. But one thing we have to understand is Atlanta is a very, there's a lot of money that comes to Atlanta. The economy of Atlanta drives the state of Georgia. But also you have to understand that there's a culture here when we talk about power and we talk about economics, that sometimes that power and economics does not reach the people who need it the most. I tell people all the time, if you want to see the real Atlanta, get in your car, start at the north side of town, well, not the north side, the mid side of town called Lindbergh, and just drive down Peachtree Street. You're going to see homeless brothers. Every time you stop, you're going to see some homeless people. And they don't show that on TV. And there's a lot of things that could be done that the city surely should be taking care of that they don't do. And there's enough money in the city, black money, that some of this stuff could be taken care of. But once you get between the people who are not serious about what they want to do for the community and the red tape you got to deal with from the people who run City Hall, these people will be out there years at a time and everything. And it's ridiculous that the so-called Black Mecca has so many black men and black women out here on the street. So I'm saying, so anyway, to go back to answer your question, there's some people who are famous and wealthy who do things under the table on the quiet, but not so many as there should be in a city that they're going to claim Atlanta the way they claim.
You mean the Real Housewives aren't out there doing no, what you said about homeless people in the street? Yeah, you would never see that on like Real Housewives of Atlanta. They don't show that.
The only time you think about it, when you talk about the real Atlanta, the only time you see Real Housewives is that ooh child of ghetto. Where was she at? That's how these people think about the people out there in the streets.
Atlanta has the highest population of unhomed black men in America, point blank. Atlanta has, and I think it doubles the closest city, right? And then I mean, you go to Black Meccas, Charlotte, Houston, wherever, right? Orlando, I think Jacksonville and Orlando are like real close to being next, right? And these people, and if you talk to a homeless brother in Atlanta, and I do say black men, there are a lot of black women that are homeless, but there's a much higher percentage of black men that are homeless here in the city of Atlanta. And when you talk to them, they'll tell you what neighborhood they're from. Bro, I'm from Mechanicsville, which if you knew anything about Atlanta, Mechanicsville is like right outside, right? You can see the Capitol building from Mechanicsville. And when you go to Mechanicsville, this is one of the blackest, most historical black places in America. And it's getting gentrified. You see the Apple houses. I call them Apple houses. They look like Apple watches, but they're Apple houses. Like it looks like a box, just like Torrance said earlier. They have Apple houses in the middle of some of the, and I mean, you'll hear, the interesting part about it is you're going to hear these neighborhoods in all the music. Like you'll hear the neighborhoods in all the music, right? If you listen to a Killer Mike album, if you listen to 2 Chainz, if you listen to anybody from Atlanta, basically, they're going to talk about all the neighborhoods of Atlanta. And some of them show up sporadically, right? But you got to get it how you live in Atlanta. Atlanta is cutthroat when it comes down to getting money for your neighborhood, because most people are getting money for themselves. Why? Because there's a mentality that you have to make it like these celebrities. Atlanta's the new Hollywood. So for people to be community oriented and get money, you got to almost take money from outside of Atlanta. I guarantee you got to take money from outside of Atlanta to put it back into your neighborhood. There's no way to get it here because people really don't care.
One thing I want to add too, it's you mentioned the neighborhoods. I remember a lot of rappers mentioning College Park. I would hear College Park a lot in songs for rappers that were from Atlanta. Now, this is another thing I will show people too, because even when we talk about homeowners, check this out, guys. Investors now own 30% of Metro Atlanta's single family rental homes. And this is according to new data. Senator Ossoff unveiled new data showing corporate ownership in the region is about 10 times the national average. This is insane. And it's not just happening in Atlanta, it's happening all over the country, but 10 times higher than the national average. This is another thing we talked about where you have these developers and you have, private equity that are buying these homes. And one thing I really want to get this message out to people. If you own a home, please, please, please do not sell your home to said contractor, said developer, said, corporate. Do not sell your home. Keep that house in your family, because what I've seen happen, and it's happened up here as well, developers will come into these neighborhoods, and they typically like to come into low income neighborhoods because they see it as this way. Okay, you probably need the money. They are going up to people, offering people $1 million for a home that their grandparents probably paid $15,000 for here in Boston. And if you're lower income, you're like, oh, wow, $1 million. A lot of people are like, oh, yeah, give me the money, take the house. But what the developers do is they don't keep the house. They tear the house down and they'll build like luxury condos in that spot, in that lot, or they'll build like, some other residential building, but it'll be luxury apartments that most people in the neighborhood can't afford. And this is another thing I try to tell people about. Don't sell your home. Keep it in because that is a part of your net worth. But I know it's hard. Like if let's say you're lower income and someone comes to you and they say, I'll give you $1 million for your house. And it's happening all over. But the fact that it's 10 times higher in Atlanta than the national average, that is very concerning. Marcus, have you heard anything from Senator Ossoff pulled the data, but what about Raphael Warnock? Have you heard him say anything or address this issue at all about the home ownership issue?
Not really. I haven't heard him say anything about like home ownership, but I can't pinpoint whether he did or not. But I haven't it hasn't been a blatant conversation about it. And considering the fact that I get a phone call every single day from my little home here in Hateville. And also, I want to point out something real quick, just so we can get some logistics together, if you don't mind, Sabby. So East Point, College Park, Hateville, Decatur. If you were to put all those cities together, and that is the Atlanta metro area, we think of it as Atlanta, but they're all their own individual cities, right? If you were to add those back into the Atlanta matrix, then Atlanta would still be a majority Black city. When it comes down to living in the city of Atlanta, though, they've pushed us out because of the downtown hub. When it comes down to these elected officials actually talking about the housing crisis, well, some of these folks have to go against their allies if they talk about homelessness here in the state, in the city of Atlanta and in Georgia in general. What I mean by that is everybody wants to be cool with the next governor, so I might be quiet if I have to say anything about what Kesheev did if he was thinking about running for whatever, or what Keisha Lance Bottoms did now that she's running for governor. And then let's not forget, there's an Ossoff election season coming up here shortly. So I am happy that the election season is coming up with Ossoff at least. You know why? I'm not sitting there saying, because to be honest with you, if Brian Kemp had decided to run against Ossoff, Ossoff wouldn't be the next senator. Now that I think that the field is cleared a little bit, he's probably going to win re-election. But one thing I do know is that he's a white guy that's running for running for re-election in the Senate here. He's going to have to touch on some of these issues. And that's why it's safe for him to say things right now, because he knows that he has to get reelected. He's going to bring up these things. And I mean, maybe he has a good heart. I don't know. But the housing issue, just like Top City, these are issues that have been talked about in the city of Atlanta for, I don't know, Torrin, what you think?
Probably
15
at least,
years now?
Yeah, pretty much. And we've probably seen some of the stuff we're talking about now. We've seen the writing on the wall for this about 20 years, but it's really started ramping up in maybe 2020 in the wake of the George Floyd thing. Some of these things that started coming back around. The sad thing about it is that, some of the stuff you expect, because this is nothing new. Some of the stuff we're seeing are things that people who've been conscious about the Black community have been talking about since the 1980s and 1990s, ever since Boys in the Hood even enjoyed in public consciousness. The sad thing about it happening in Atlanta is because with Atlanta's 100-year-long legacy of Black civil rights and the legacy that it always trades on with Martin Luther King and, you know, being focused on the poor and the working class and the downtrodden. A lot of that legacy that Atlanta likes to trade on for visitors and people to come to the convention center and go to visit the tomb and everything like that. The people who are selling that stuff don't believe it themselves. It's almost like they'll sell that to you. They'll sell you the dream, but they're not putting in no real work to keep this city the city that it used to be. And I hate to say it, but the Atlanta that I came here to see, to live in, is no longer here anymore. This is just a city like any other city, and people are fighting tooth and nail like in any other city. There's still the trappings of that, but the people who are supposed to be the stewards of the legacy of Atlanta, they're really falling down on the job. Not all of them, but it's such an uphill battle to sometimes fight with your own people to try to get some of these things remedied that it's really disheartening, especially in a city like this.
So let me ask a question, because this is the Out of Reach report, and this report is published every year. And I did notice something. I started looking at this report 2 years ago. Georgia, I'm noticing Georgia creeping up, that like Georgia has the 20th highest housing wage when you look at all the other compared to the other states. So according to the Out of Reach report, it says that you need to make at least $28.98 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom rental home in Georgia. If you make minimum wage in Georgia, you would need to work 160 hours a week to afford a 2-bedroom rental home. And something I've been trying to warn people about, like when people say, if you live in an expensive state, just move to one that's cheaper to live in. Eventually what happens is that more affordable state becomes less affordable to the people who are living there, because when you have an influx of people coming in, then you have this issue with supply and demand. So if the demand is high, but the supply is low, the cost of living is going to increase. I saw this happen in Nashville, Tennessee. I have a friend that lived in Nashville, moved outside of Nashville because Nashville became too expensive. Like this is happening all across the country. One thing in particular I have about Atlanta is the jobs. I got a question about this one, and I'm gonna go to you, Marcus, for this. I remember like when I was graduating undergrad, there was a segment of my friends that decided to move to Atlanta, and they all decided to do this as one big group trip. They didn't have jobs lined up. I was wary about this. All of them came back. And you know what all of them told me? They couldn't find a job. Now that was years ago. They all had college degrees, but what is the job market now? What is that like now in Atlanta? Are people finding jobs that are paying well?
Hey, we full. Y'all stay where y'all at. We don't want none. Well, we full. Don't. No more hookahs. No more neon grass wall pictures. No more hookahs. We are done. Don't come. Stay y'all ass wherever the hell y'all at, because we are literally done. We ain't taking nobody, and there's no more rap videos. And stop making everything smell like cannabis and hookah all over the place. Now I'm just joking. There ain't no jobs here. There are efforts. Let me stop. There are efforts to create tech jobs, right? Because the big thing right now, and if you go to Midtown, right? Midtown is the area. I guess Snooze, and I don't know. It's north of the stadium, but south of Buckhead, right? That's the Midtown area. They're trying to turn it into a tech hub. The problem is that there's not a lot of, they don't want to hire Atlanta folks because a lot of Atlanta folks are not taking care, like not getting the access to the educations that is needed. ATC, Atlanta Technical College, is an amazing school, right? But even ATC is starting to look at an influx of people from outside the city of Atlanta to fulfill these tech jobs. And then we talk about Georgia Tech. I don't remember the last person that they took from the hood and went to Georgia Tech. There's a lot of people from Atlanta that go to Georgia Tech, but you have to have there's not really extreme amount of folks. And if you think about it, people who graduate from the black colleges here, right? The AU, they typically leave, right? They leave. There's not a lot of people that stay here. So if they're leaving, then what makes you think that you're going to come here and get a job? Like, we all know the people who want to come to Atlanta badly. If you're a black person in America, you know somebody who wants to move to Atlanta, or you've lived in Atlanta. Atlanta is really a place where everybody wants to come. But the problem is that it's literally full. And then you're going to get really disappointed when you figure out that even though there's a lot of black people in Atlanta, the ones with the nicest jobs are white and Asian. right? Just like any other city in America, right? So when you look at, if you see a white person in Atlanta that's not homeless, they probably have a tech job and they probably took your job. I'm not mad at that, but there's not a lot of jobs here. The transportation industry has slowed down completely. When I talk, and we're talking about, now you add on the tariff issue, which is hitting Atlanta also. And when America gets a cold, Black America gets a flu, nothing has changed about the city of Atlanta.
Torin, the job prospects, what's your experience been like as well?
Oh man, I'm gonna go back to my history. When I graduated, Atlanta was the city that Marcus described and that your friends described, Sabby. You know, if you were Black and you were educated, Atlanta's where you go. When I first moved to Atlanta, I got to Atlanta, I caught a Greyhound bus to Atlanta, crashed with a friend of mine for about a month. And within about a week and a half after I got there, I got a corporate job. That's how good the economy was when I first got there. And I worked there for like 7 years. That was a long time ago. And even talking to younger people who ask about that sort of stuff, it's almost like you the old man with the beard sitting around a campfire talking about the old days from Mad Max. Those days are done. The job market in Atlanta, if you are not creating your own job, and if you haven't been in a job for 20 years, and even that's starting to die, you have no job. And it's sad because, again, I'm gonna go back to this again. The infrastructure that used to be able to support younger Black people coming into a city and ramping you up and mentoring people to go into the workforce, they've either retired, some of them have passed on, and the people who have taken their spots do not look like us. Or if they look like us, there's very much an individualistic, madman, I'm out for myself sort of like mentality, where it's like, I got mine, you get it the best way you can to get it how you live. It's rough. The job market is rough. I mean, that's why I think that's part of the reason why so many of the younger people aren't even thinking about going into the workforce and everything. Some of these kids are starting to do their own digital media. They're starting to go and they're trying to find a job through TikTok and some of them doing OnlyFans. And I hate to say it, but some of that stuff is more lucrative than trying to go out here and go to work like the old days is, because trying to go through and putting on a tie and trying to get a job, it's not going to happen for you here anymore like it used to. Pick up a mic, try to get you a podcast or do something, because trying to go and get a regular job, it's not going to happen anymore like it used to.
Hey, even Magic City full, even Strokers full. Like you can't even you can't get to the strip. You can't get to a gig in a strip club.
Sabby, those are deep Atlanta cuts there. If you don't know what that is, if you can't get a job over there, they ain't even trying to do it.
The Blue Flame full. Like you can't listen. I'm gonna tell you something though. That's chicken wings in America. Blue Flame.
Check it out. Even the Water Boys on 14th on the bridge, they fight at the spots and everything. They fight over water, trying to sell water on the corner and stuff. It's real, man.
Oh my God. I went to Magic City once in my life. Once. Long time ago. Because everybody said you got to go at least once because it's an experience. And it was an experience. I was like, oh my God. That's crazy. So back to the colleges, the students that are at the HBCU. See, this is something else I want to mention too. I think sometimes that people think that because the city may have a lot of colleges, that it has a lot of jobs. And that's not always the case. If they're not staying in Atlanta, where are they moving to?
Well, so a lot of people who stay in the area, right? And I want to touch on something else real quick. Earlier, you showed us a graphic of the cost of living when it comes down to being in Georgia. If that's the average cost of living, then that it takes $28 to live in Georgia, then I'm gonna say $35 to live in Atlanta. And the reason why is because if you average in how much it costs to live in a city like Macon, Georgia, which is a lot cheaper, right? And a lot of people are going down to Macon. If you average in the cities like they're outside of Atlanta is pretty much 3 other semi-urban areas or urban areas. Same crime rate, same drug dependency, same rate of homelessness, but a lower cost of living. Then you talk about hitting Atlanta proper within the Tri-Cities, Indicator. In Buckhead, it costs $2,800 for a 1-bedroom. In Old Fourth Ward right now, it costs $2,100 right down the street from Martin Luther King's gravesite. It costs so much money to live in this town, and all of this stuff has shot up in the past. I want to say in the past 6 years, it has gotten psychotic. When I first got to Atlanta, you could get you a house, 1-bedroom for $800, $900. Now that same $800, $900 a month apartment is $2,200 just 6 years later, right? Now, how do you stay here if you haven't gotten a raise, right? And the last point I want to make is I find it interesting. Shout out to the city of Decatur, because the city of Decatur actually has on their books right now a bill to try to pass reparations locally. Real dope, real cool. Y'all are dope for that. Y'all are dope for attempting it. Of course, federal reparations are the most important thing that we could possibly get, because the federal government is the one with the bag, right? But I find it ironic that the safest city to have reparations is Atlanta, Georgia, and has been for a very long time. You know why? Because in Atlanta, there's so much blackness here that even if it's a majority white city council, they'll still be afraid to go anti-black. They will be, right? But we have not seen the bill get brought up whatsoever, right? And what I'm hoping is that some of the Tri-City areas and the cities around Atlanta actually start passing more of these bills, because Atlanta proper deserves it. If there's any city in America outside of maybe Montgomery same thing as Atlanta deserves. Black people in Atlanta, especially the ones that have been here since the 50s, the 60s, had their houses taken from them because of tax increases. Had crime. The Red Dogs used to be, if you don't know anything about Atlanta, Georgia, the Red Dogs used to be the hop out boys for the police department that destroyed lives, planted drugs on people, killed people, beat people up. This is the part of the police department. And now they're having Cop City here. Cop City alone is going to be a reason why Black people in Atlanta need reparations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and same for you, Torrin. It's like when they're pushing people out, and I always say this, like I'm working on a documentary right now, gentrification documentary about Boston, and I've learned so much because I wasn't born and raised here, but it's really traumatic. Like the things that people have told me, and then the neighborhoods, and just seeing how things have turned over. And when the documentary's done, you guys will see it. But some of the things that were said, I almost like fell out of my chair, because you think, how could this happen in 2025, right? But it's happening in a lot of major cities across the country. But again, it's like people get pushed out, and this usually happen in Black neighborhoods where they get pushed and pushed further out, and it's like, how much more are you going to push until we have nowhere to go?
No, if you come to Atlanta, I think the closest analogy I can think of to describe the way Atlanta's set up now is Paris. If you ever seen the way the grid is set up in Paris when it comes to economics, Paris, France, like the people who live inside the city are very wealthy. That's where the citizens of government are. That's where the Louvre and all the tourist stuff is. But if you go to the outer rings of Paris, that's where you see all the people who are dirt poor. A lot of the African immigrants, a lot of the immigrants from Morocco and Algeria all live on the outskirts of Paris. That's the way Atlanta's set up now. If you go out to Jonesboro, if you go out to like Smyrna, and these used to be the wealthy neighborhoods where the white people lived at, they're all moving back into the city, and they're pushing all the poor people out to Smyrna and Jonesboro and Duluth and all these places like that. Like if you go out there, you'll see things that used to be unheard of in Atlanta, where you see homeless people sitting on the bus stops like in Duluth and everything, and like places like Jonesboro, that sort of stuff. And that, like I said, that was unheard of. Those were like the ritzy, wealthy white areas. And again, and I'm gonna say this again, all this stuff is happening on the watch of Black people who trade on the legacy of the people who built this city, but are only out for themselves, and they're not even thinking about the mayor's position in Atlanta isn't really about being the mayor of Atlanta. It's looking about how can I get a cabinet post when I get voted out and get to Washington before I work on Atlanta. That's what that's about. I'm not saying everybody's doing that, but the majority of them are doing that. They're not really building on the city. They're trying to get photo ops so they can show up on TV shows and things like that, so they can get a name, get a brand, so they can leave the city. And the city gets worse and worse every year. It's like, and it's like you could say, we all know the history of American disenfranchisement. We all know the history of economic disenfranchisement for Black people in America. But it's doubly sad when you have people who look like you who are facilitating this stuff, and then they can show up to the government then and then go to Stephen Colbert and grin and say like I'm fighting Trump and everything like this. What good is it to show that you fighting Trump but you ain't defending your people who are here? I ain't finna say no names, but but some of these people know what I'm talking about. It's wild, man. It's really almost like being in the Twilight Zone, man. It's like the stuff you used to think Bull Connor and the people that Martin Luther King will fight. They have to get this stuff done. You got to fight people who look like you and put their fists in the air when they come around your neighborhood. You never see them again every 2 to 4 years. It's wild. It's wild.
And I add one thing to that.
Go ahead.
Torrin hit one point. I think one of the top 5 mayors of all time was Maynard Jackson. He and if you don't know who he is, look up the work that he did and the deal that he made in the Atlanta airport, where the Atlanta airport is one of the largest economic centers for Black businesses across the planet, right? It might be the biggest one, right? Where he made sure that we had jobs and ownership in order for Delta to come here. Those type of deals happened under his watch in the city, outside the city. He was black first, he was citizen first, and we have not seen anyone like that since then. It's been a downgrade since Maynard, and I just wish we had more mayors like him since then. But they'll sell us a black dream while they're running, and then they will be a developer's wet dream when they become the mayor, and it's just psychotic.
Yeah. This is really important. This is why I wanted to have this conversation, because I know a lot of times in this show we talk about what's happening on the national level, but a lot of these things that are happening in local communities, local neighborhoods, is the president is not dealing with this. Like the president, regardless if it was Trump, Biden, they're not dealing with the gentrification issue. They're just not. Like, this is a local, political issue. And it seems like no matter what city you go in, it's happening in all of the major cities. So we have to bring a spotlight back to local issues. Torn and Marcus, thank you both so much. Before you go, can you tell everybody where to find you and how to find your work? We'll go to Marcus.
Yeah, you could just go to Marcus Farrell Live on YouTube. Every now and then I do some stuff. Probably going to put some more content up there soon. Also, please look me up on Marcus for America on Instagram and Twitter. And I am a cannabis dispensary owner in Chicago. And I also do some consulting work for independents and Democrats here in the state of Georgia.
All right. My name is Torrin Walker. You can usually find me. Go to torrinwalker.com. You can see all my links. I also write a weekly column on Substack, torrinwalker.substack.com. And I have my YouTube channel, Torrin Walker TV. And I also have a consulting business and a brand management business. So if you have a business that you want to try to build a brand story around and digital storytelling, look me up, torrinwalker.com.
All right. Thank you both so much. Have a great weekend.
Peace.
Thank you. See.
Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.